You are now listening to the Pound for Pound Boxing Report, where you hear all things boxing.
Welcome to another episode Pound for Pound Boxing Report. I am your host, Michael. As of the recording of this show, we're recording it on May 22nd, Wednesday, May 22nd. Because Google Hangout is having all kinds of problems this evening, widespread reports of issues with Google Hangout, we're doing this recording via Skype. Joining me on the show this week, Daniel from the Inscriber, Jacob from Jab Hook. What's going on, fellas?
Good evening.
Good evening.
For those who are new to Pound for Pound Boxing Report, Pound for Pound Boxing Report, live YouTube show, podcast, and blog discussing all things boxing. The motto is when boxing is good, we will talk about it. When it's bad, we will talk about it. Bottom line is, if it concerns the sweet science, we will talk about it. If you want to find out all information regarding Pound for Pound Boxing Report, the blog page is the place to go to, p4pboxingreport.wordpress.com. That is the link. You check the right of the blog page, you'll find links to where to follow us all over social media, where to find us on all platforms that carry podcasts, Spotify, iTunes, SoundCloud, and the like, as well as the links to the donate button. Let donation be the best nation. Got a PayPal and Cash Me account on the site as well. Let's get things going. Recapping what went down this weekend. Going to start a bit different here. Going to start with one card that took place in Barclays, and then the second fight I'm going to talk about was a DAZN card, World Boxing Super Series. Name of this episode is The Power of Wilder and Inoue, and I'm going to go in that order. First, starting with Deontay Wilder, his bout, and then Naoya Inoue, who in his bout. Start with the Wilder fight first. Fought Domonic Breazeale at Barclays this past weekend in Brooklyn. First round KO for Bomb Squad. He said he wanted a body. He almost took a body. And after getting buzzed a bit by Breazeale, he landed a titanic right hand that put Breazeale down and out. People thought he had killed him. I will go to you first, Jacob. Look, last week we basically said that, look, in spite of the talk from Breazeale, he was going to lose. The question was going to be how soon he was going to lose. Did you expect what you saw first round knockout in sensational fashion?
I didn't expect a first round knockout. I was going to give Breazeale a little bit more credit to be a little bit smarter. I mean, Wilder's going to come with the right hand, and he just a really bad game plan. After talking all that shit, I mean, he's had two chances to, be a champion, and he's blown them both. So, but this one in spectacular fashion. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. The fight didn't barely get to work up a sweat. I mean, it was pretty much over and done before everybody knew it. But, it's just bad strategy. He knew that Wilder, that's his money punch, is that right hand, and he let him land it clean. It doesn't make any sense. So I don't even know where he goes from here, and I don't really care to see him again, to tell you the truth.
Sorry, I was on mute. I'll go to you, Daniel. Your impressions of what little we saw. Look, Breazeale, he talked a whole lot, got knocked out. Your thoughts on how he conducted himself afterwards? What Jim Gray had to say, the fact that he really didn't want to do a post-fight interview. A lot of people frown on him for that. Your thoughts on not just the fight itself, but the actions of Breazeale post-fight?
Well, in the round that we saw, the only round that we saw, it was made pretty clear that Breazeale really tried to make sure to goad Wilder into doing one of those wild punches.
Can't hear you, Daniel.
Can't hear you, Daniel. Are you still there?
But it was just the way he had it, where I think he expected Wilder to try to throw the right hand long. He didn't expect him to throw that short hook the way. So he had no chance to recover from that. Now, the post-fight interview, that's Broner-esque in a way. The only difference is with Broner, it was just for an embarrassment from losing his L. On this one, in this case, it's a situation where he talked a lot of trash and just was not able to back it up. But you have to consider the two losses he has are against the two world champions. So he's just realized that he's just not at that level. And ultimately, it's an embarrassment in the way, because it was personal between these two. Like, we have to remember the entire incident of what led to them being in the first place. So it's going to be telling to see how he's going to react over the next coming weeks, because it's going to be a long, long time before he gets a shot again, whether it's either with Joshua or with Wilder, because with Joshua, it's just a run of the luck when it comes to seeing if he can land a mandatory and when they're the sanctioning bodies. With Wilder, there's no point. We already seen what we can do. And we have to, like Jacob mentioned, I remember the Mansour fight. We have to remember it took Mansour almost biting his tongue off to win that fight. So
he knocked down Breazeale in that fight.
Yep, he did. That's what I mean. It took Amir Mansour almost biting his tongue off for him to win. So it's, like I said, it is unprofessional in a way, but the way he conducted, but at the same time, and at some level, I can understand it when you talk a lot of smack and it just ends so emphatically for you.
Now, Luis Ortiz, who Wilder defeated last year, very exciting fight, stopped him in 10 rounds. He was in the ring during the post-fight interview. They asked him about a future fight with Wilder. He's basically said, if Wilder's up to it, yeah, let's do it. There seems to be a plan in place for Wilder for the next 2-3 fights. I'm hearing Ortiz. I'm hearing Glowacki. My thing is this. You still got Dillian White out there. Dillian White fighting Oscar Rivas. Dillian White has had his issues, or the WBC has had his issues with him. That's the fight I want to see personally. I think Dillian White, he has earned his shot at the WBC title. He deserves a shot at the WB title. Why he's not getting it, what the WBC has with issues they have with him, I don't know. What would you like to see? A rematch with Ortiz, a fight with Glowacki, or Dillian White finally getting his opportunity at the WBC title? Daniel, Jacob, any one of you guys can respond.
You first, Jacob. I got to think about this one.
I mean, I completely agree with you. I think if anybody has earned another crack, it's White. You know, I think more so he's earned a crack at Joshua's belts, but you know, with the current situation with White, you know, and him kind of going to the other side, you know, he should get first crack. You know, Ortiz is, I mean, he's still a credible opponent, but I think, I mean, his last few performances haven't been that great, or last couple of performances. in my opinion. And so, Wyatt has had some really. I mean, he's had some adversity, but he's had some really good performances too. So, he's earned it, and if they can make that fight, I think it'd be an exciting fight, and I think he offers up, not only power but some interesting things for Wilder to have to deal with. So I think it would be a very compelling fight.
Your thoughts, Daniel?
On merit, let's just say on merit, it has to be Dylan White. Because the guy has literally fought title eliminators for the past 2 or 3 years, one after the other. And it doesn't matter if it's against Wilder or if it's against Joshua. He's earned a title shot. The thing, though, is just that whole politics on the other side, where if he signed with Top Rank, you run into the same issue that prevented the Tyson Fury fight, the rematch. And if you're going to give a choice Wilder between fighting Dillian White or Tyson Fury, he's going to pick Tyson Fury. Now, Ortiz has a case mainly because he gave Wilder the biggest scare. We all can agree that if Ortiz probably had 10 to 15 more seconds left in the round, he probably would have won that fight. And that adds a bit of compelling nature, even though he lost the way he lost. Just down on his knees and slobbering because of the uppercut from Wilder. The situation, though, is, like Jacob mentioned, his last performances haven't been exactly exemplary. And we don't know whether that's motivation. We don't know whether it's the Cuban birth certificate finally catching up to him. Or just seeing a natural progression of a fighter's decline. Gawaki is going to be interesting because he has a fight already lined up. So that could be a situation where he put himself out of position in a way, because he has a fight with Chris Arreola coming up soon now. So he might have taken himself out of the running, even though that's probably the fight that you probably want to see most because of how he has been knocking out people, including like his fellow countryman Spilka. So I would say on merit, like I said, if it's based on merit, Dillian White. For storytelling purposes, I would probably say Ortiz.
Let's move on to the World Boxing Super Series. That card that took place on DAZN. You had the semifinal, the second semifinal of the super lightweight tournament. Excuse me. We'll talk about that in a bit, but I want to focus first on the second semifinal of the World Boxing Super Series bantamweight tournament. Naoya Inoue, WBA champion, fighting IBF bantamweight champion Emmanuel Rodriguez. And I go to you, Daniel. Inoue continues to show why he's called the monster. Continues to impress. After pretty even first round, Inoue stepped on the gas. The power really showed, and man, did he put on a display in the second round, first putting Rodriguez down with the left hook. 2 more knockdowns came subsequent of body shots, and the fight was over. Talk about this, the force that is Naoya Inoue. He continues to go in there and just run over opponents. I will argue this was even more impressive than the Wilder win over Breazeale because he was facing such a high caliber of opponents. Sensational by the monster.
You can say that both in the caliber of opponent. You can say it in the way because it's a fellow champion in Rodriguez. And it's most impressive because Inoue's doing it with both hands. That's what made those knockdowns and eventual knockout so beautiful. He does it with both hands. He doesn't rely too much. Hey, Gail. He doesn't rely too much on just the power. That's the flaw that Wilder has. It's both a gift and a curse for him because he believes in his power, but he over relies on it. Inoue knows he has powers both hands, but he has such a good skill set already that he can land those punches pretty well. And that knockout was just so emphatic. And I do agree, it is more impressive than Wilder's because while heavyweights reign supreme when it comes to casual fan spotlight, just how systematic it was. It was just, I just got to give a French, like one of those little chef's kisses. Beautiful, just beautiful.
Sorry, I was on mute. I'm hearing some Game of Thrones playing in the background, so just cut the volume down a little bit. Whoever's whoever watching Game of Thrones, probably watching that final episode, which was a little bit which was disappointing to many. I'll go to you. You mentioned Gail. Gail from Communities Digital News has joined us. Going to get her into the conversation. First, Gail, I want to hear your thoughts on Wilder and his first round knockout of Breazeale, and also talk about Naoya Inoue in the way he took apart Emmanuel Rodriguez in Glasgow as part of the second semifinal of the World Boxing Super Series Bantamweight tournament.
Well, what a contrast for the audience watching to see these two different styles of fighters and different styles of knockouts. Listen, Wilder did what he needed to do, what we knew he could do. I'm frankly more disappointed in Domonic Breazeale that he came out almost if he had just woken up or something and was still a little dazed walking into the ring. He didn't seem to have his wits about him. He's a much, much better fighter than that. What a shame that he turned out to be just barely a human punching bag. So while the knockout certainly was highlight reel thrilling for how it appeared, it didn't mean that much, and it didn't show me that much. Inoue, on the other hand, the performance against what we all thought would be a challenging opponent was genius, was technical brilliance and power in action. All the things you ask a boxer to do, he can do. That first round was fairly competitive, and I'm sitting back at the end of the bell after round one, first 3 minutes, thinking, we might have a dandy little fight on our hands. We might actually have to see Inoue work for a win. Well, I spoke about a minute and 17 seconds too soon because suddenly he decided to go to work. He saw whatever openings he needed to in that first 3 minutes and went to work. And just like Daniel said, the impressive thing was the arsenal the man has. Left hook to the head, right to the sternum, left hook to the body. Every knockdown was a different kind of punch. Every one of them was devastating. He didn't even hit Rodriguez flush with that first hook to the head. I mean, he got it on the chin, but, it wasn't a full connect. But Inoue puts every bit of technique from the feet up into a punch, every bit of 118 pounds, and then some, plus all the force of physics is behind every punch. And that's what makes it so impressive. Just an amazing performance. I fear for Nonito Donaire. I hope he uses every bit of his veteran's experience to keep himself from being crushed like a bug like that. But Inoue is just, we're running out of words, frankly, to describe just how good he is. For anyone who doesn't appreciate what he does, they really shouldn't even be allowed to watch because you don't know what you're looking at. You don't deserve to see it and enjoy it. But a phenomenal performance. And I do hope the World Boxing Super Series delivers on a really terrific set of finals, both in the bantamweight and the super lightweight division. And that's what we get when the top guys in the division, the best, fight the best. We get the best fights. And a lot of these guys are risking undefeated records, and good for them. A loss is not going to kill anybody's career. Every single guy who's been in the series has put on a good performance, even in a loss, with the exception of Rodriguez and probably Juan Carlos Payano. But good for them for putting it up and seeing what they're made of.
Okay, I was on Dan the Man show, Dan the Man Boxing show earlier this week talking about this fight. Shout out to Dan the Man Boxing for having me on. And talking about this fight, in my opinion, if you can't give credit to Inoue, to piggyback of what Gail was saying, I don't know what's wrong. If you don't have Inoue in your top pound for pound rankings, Jacob, top 10, top 5, I question your knowledge as a boxing fan. I'm going to give you the opportunity to talk about what you saw from Inoue. A lot of people, myself included, thought that Rodriguez would take Inoue some rounds. Nope. He found the mark. He zoned in, and once he started to land the punches, it was over.
Yeah, first I want to give a shout out to Gus from Corruption in Boxing. If you go on YouTube, he has a great breakdown video of this fight. But yeah, Inoue definitely deserves to be in the. I would say you could probably put him. He's definitely in my top 5, but he might be top 4, top 3. And a lot of people might say, kind of like they've done with Lomachenko, where hey, he doesn't have he only has 18 fights. His resume is not there yet. But if you look at his last 3 fights and what he's been able to do, and this is the sign of, in my opinion, of a great fighter and of a pound for pound fighter. It's not that he's not even going rounds with these guys. He's making these really good fighters look. He's destroying them. He's literally destroying them. I mean, Payano, McDonald, Rodriguez. I mean, that's a pretty good 1, 2, 3 as far as resume goes, if you ask me. And that's after coming up from 115 to 118. So what he's been able to do and how he's been able to do it. You can have a guy like a Floyd Mayweather who relies on his boxing skills and get a lot of decision wins against, potentially, some faded champions. But this guy's doing it to guys that are, I would say, are in closer to their prime. But he's absolutely destroying them. I mean, that left hand, I kind of disagree with what Gail said. I thought it landed, it was flush. It landed right there on the chin. And that the fight was over then. You could see Rodriguez was very hurt. His nose seemed to be busted. And the fact that he came back and just attacked the body with that little 1-2 to the body, and it was super impressive. As far as the Danier fight, I think that's a really interesting, fun fight because Danier is he's a veteran. I think he's a smart guy. He also has power. I think he's gonna hopefully do what these other guys didn't do, like Rodriguez. For some reason, he thought he was going to go toe-to-toe with Inoue, which I thought was the wrong strategy. He should have felt him out first, before you start, going toe-to-toe to see if you can, maybe expose some of his defensive deficiencies, which Inoue does have some. He can be hit. But fortunately for him, he's been able to hit guys before he gets hit with his power, and basically it's night over. But I think that'll be a fun fight. I'm never going to count Danya out of a fight. I think he's very crafty. He's a good veteran, so I think that should be a good fight. But it's hard to bet against Inoue right now. I mean, it's kind of hopefully we'll get to see a fight with Tete, but at this point I think he's going to beat Tete. So he's kind of the so-called uncrowned champion of this excellent World Boxing Super Series, and so I'm excited to see what happens. Hopefully they have the fight somewhere in LA so I can go see it.
You given your opinions on what's next for Inoue. For those who don't know, Inoue will be fighting on Nonito Donaire for the World Boxing Super Series bantamweight championship, the whole kit and caboodle. I believe it's going to be. I think with this win, Inoue won the Ring magazine's title as well. His win over Rodriguez. You given your opinion, Jacob, as you have, Gail. I'm going to give Daniel the opportunity to give his quick thoughts on the final between Inoue and Tete. We'll talk more about this fight once it's announced as we get closer towards the date. But Daniel, your quick thoughts on a Inoue Nonito Donaire showdown.
I pray for Nonito. I really do, because that is a monster that he's facing in all sense of the word. Now, he has gotten lucky. We have to remember the whole tournament. Whether it's the injury to Ryan Burnett, and whether in this case, whether it was Tete getting hurt just days before the fight. His only hope is that the run continues and then you see Inoue get hurt, so that he can fight the alternate. But that is something I did not want to see. I was scared to see when it was Tete. And now with Inoue, with this area, I don't know. But he has looked good, at least a little bit in bantamweight. So I'm willing to give Nonito a little bit of a chance, just based on some veteran grit.
For me, the question is, if Inoue uses his feet and uses his speed, his athleticism, he will beat Donaire and beat him quite easily. The only shot I give Donaire is power. He can punch. If he can force Inoue to stand there and trade, he has the power to hurt anybody at that weight. He can catch him there. But outside of that, Inoue is too young right now, too young and too fast of hand and foot for Donaire to deal with at this point. So I would have to favor Inoue in a showdown with Donaire as well. And we will talk about this more once the fight is announced and as we get closer to the announced date. Want to stay in Glasgow. Inoue and Rodriguez was the co-main event. The main event was the semifinal, the second semifinal of the World Boxing Super Series Super Lightweight Tournament between IBF champion Ivan Baranchyk, Josh Taylor. Taylor ended up winning by unanimous decision. I'll go to you, Gail. Very good fights. Went pretty much as I thought. Baranchyk, he's tough as an oak. Very, very strong guy. Physically, likes to throw a lot of punches in there. Mainly throwing power punches. He gave Taylor some tough moments in there, but overall, the boxing ability, the speed was just too much for Baranchyk. And the thing that really impressed me, Gail, was when Taylor stood there in the pocket and fought with Baranchyk on the inside, he was either even or at times got the better of Baranchyk in the inside. So though he had some tough moments, at the end of the day, I was very impressed by what I saw from Taylor. Your thoughts?
Yeah, it was a very competitive fight, although there was certainly no question about the decision. Still, Baranchyk was in the fight till the very end. It was always a possibility as he got behind on the cards that he could turn it around quickly, score some knockdowns, or perhaps even get a stoppage. He was still that much in it. But Taylor avoided the worst of the punishment, seemed to take several punches that could have dealt him some damage very well, and delivered plenty of his own. He didn't get caught. Even when he was fighting on the inside, I never felt like he was trapped. He was never in danger of losing focus or getting overwhelmed. He was fairly careful. He was just one of those good, competitive fights, two skilled guys. Once again, here we have in a World Boxing Super Series tournament format, two guys willing to put undefeated records forward against each other. And that's what makes for a good, competitive, entertaining fight that goes 12 rounds between two guys who are in it to the very end. One-punch knockouts might be temporarily thrilling, but they do not make a full boxing meal. Taylor and Baranchyk was a full boxing meal. Two guys, win or lose, you would be very happy to see again. Now, I don't think either of them can be favored, no matter who is going to be the winner. They will not be the favorite in the final. Nevertheless, they give a very good accounting of themselves, win and lose.
I have my thoughts on that. I'm going to you, Jacob. Taylor, he always seemed to be a step ahead. Scored a knockdown, I want to say, in the 7th round by way of a right hook. Sixth round, you're right. Thanks for the correction. By way of a right hook. Again, Baranchyk, he's a tough guy. He's all heart. He got a pit bull attitude, and he got up and he kept fighting to the end. But whatever response that Baranchyk had, Taylor always seemed to have something to thwart any momentum that Baranchyk was trying to build. Your reaction to what you saw?
First off, great fight. It was a really good fight against, like Gail said, against two top guys in the division, both undefeated. They really put on a good show. I think looking at this fight, now Baranchyk, is very one-dimensional. He's a tough guy, like you said, and he's looking to land those like big punches, but he doesn't set up his punches. He winged a lot of different shots that Taylor was able to avoid. Taylor used his feet, used his jab, was going to the body well. Baranchyk also went to the body, but it wasn't as successful. I thought Barancyk's best rounds were, I thought in the 5th round, he looked like he kind of hurt Taylor, but then in the following round, the 6th round, Taylor hurt him and was able to knock him down twice in that round, and win that round pretty big. And then Baranchyk kind of like towards the end, Taylor seemed to kind of like engage him a little bit more instead of fighting from a distance and using, the tools that basically had been winning him, the rounds in the fight. And he got clipped a couple times. I think it was either the 10th or 11th round. That was a really good round for Baranchyk, and but great action. Hats off to both guys, but for Baranchyk, I think he needs to work on setting up his punches and his big punches, because he's, like I said, he's very predictable and kind of one-dimensional, where Taylor was able to kind of see his punches coming and be able to get out of the way for the most part, and able to put on a pretty good performance, arguably his best performance to date. As far as, I agree with Gail. I think Prograis is going to be favored, but I think Taylor can beat Prograis. I think Prograis is a little bit overrated. I think he's, definitely cocky and thinks that he can't lose and he can't be hurt. But he was hurt in that last fight, even though it was after the bell. So I think Taylor has enough skill where he can give him some trouble. But it should be a great finals for, once again, this is World Boxing Super Series. The first season and the second season have been, great for boxing. It's just been a pleasure to watch.
As far as Taylor Prograis bout, the final of that tournament. I will say for the record, again, early word here. We'll talk more about it when there's a specific date and a locale. You mentioned, Jacob, that many people feel that many people will have Prograis as the favorite. Gail, you said the same thing. For me, I will give. I know Prograis will be the favorite to many. I know many people will expect him to win, but I'm going against the apple cart here. I will say early on, as of this live recording on May 22nd, I would make Taylor the slight favorite. Height, the way he can move his feet, he can move around the ring a little bit more than Prograis, and I see some defensive issues with Prograis. He has good defense, but he has a tendency to bring his hands down, and that could spell trouble against a Taylor who, particularly if Taylor decides to fight a disciplined height and use foot movement as well as his hand speed. I think the hand speed, slight better hand speed. I think he will be able to, there are moments where he will be able to hit Prograis. Prograis is the harder puncher, but overall, I will favor Taylor slightly. I'll go to you, Daniel. Your thoughts on Taylor's win over Baranchyk?
It's a fight that this action looked a lot closer than the scorecards. To me, it wasn't a question that Taylor won. He was overall the better fighter into it, but that was a fun fight. And I can honestly say there is not a boring fight that you can put with Ivan Baranchyk's name on it. Even his showbox fight where he got knocked down was just as entertaining as this one. What makes it a bit interesting when it comes to Taylor is how much of a surprise that knockdown in the sixth happened. The nice little short right hook, and it was enough for Baranchyk to go down. And like I say, once again, give credit to Ivan Baranchyk for getting knocked down and coming back the way he did, never giving up on the fight. What's going to be interesting now is when we look at the Prograis fight. Skill-wise, because we haven't seen enough of Prograis yet, but we know his amateur record. We know Josh Taylor's amateur background. I would have them a little bit even, probably just with a slight edge with Prograis, just based on power. But it's going to be a fun, entertaining fight, and you could tell that meant a lot to Taylor to win in his home area, to hear "and the new." And like Gail mentioned when it comes to this, this is going to help actually Ivan Baranchyk a little bit more because he can work now better on his defense. You know he's a world champion caliber fighter, so you know he will be back.
Going to move on to the final fight of our previews. I put it last on purpose because the fight was we knew it was going to happen, just like we knew what was going to happen between Wilder and Breazeale. You knew what was going to happen between Gary Russell Jr. and Kiko Martinez. Kiko Martinez is long in the tooth, not really a featherweight, and Gary Russell Jr., as we thought he was, as we anticipated coming in, pretty much had his way, stopped him in round 5, I believe. Just too bloody, too beat up for Kiko Martinez to continue. And I'm going to open up for everybody here. If you want to talk about the fight, fine. But the question is, Russell Jr. has had this habit of fighting one time of year. He talked about fighting Santa Cruz afterwards. He talked about fighting Gervonta Davis at 130. Will he fight 100? Will he fight more than once a year? 1, 2. What direction you will go? For me, I want to see him in Santa Cruz. That's the fight at featherweight. It should happen. Why is it not happening? Why hasn't it happened yet? I don't know. But we need that fight. We need that fight. Your thoughts, folks?
It's horribly disappointing when Russell Jr. fights once a year and then disappears. I mean, what the hell does he do for the other 364 days of the year? I mean, work with his brothers, stay in shape? Does he knit, scarves for old ladies? I mean, what the hell does he do? It drives me nuts. And it has really hurt a talented fighter's career because he's forgotten in between. Everyone says, oh, yeah, Gary Russell Jr. Who is that again? They just, except for his hardcore fans, boxing nerds like us, people in the immediate area, where he's a local and he's very well known and liked, and everybody knows his family and his brothers and the gym scene there and all that, but you get out to the majority of fight fans and you get out to the other big hubs of boxing in the United States and he is forgotten. And that should not be happening, but it's of his own doing. Absolutely. He needs to fight every other guy in the division. He needs to fight Santa Cruz. He needs to take on Davis. Hell, honestly, whoever he can make a fight with, show me that you're willing to work, to get out there, to cultivate a following. Put your talent on display more than, a few rounds a year. It's insane. Whether his antics in the ring, were really something we could take at face value, I'm not sure. For those who didn't see the fight, after the fight was over, Russell Jr. put on a T-shirt where they were kind of these scrawled, handwritten notes on the back saying, get me a fight, Al, or something. I forget even what the heck it said, but essentially he let his T-shirt on the back, call out his potential opponents. And he did say he wants Santa Cruz. So he's got a full 7 months left in 2019. There is absolutely zero excuse for him not being able to make one measly fight, in 2019. So that would make this the first year in 4, I believe, that he's had more than one fight a year. And I don't know what he thinks he's doing for money. I mean, he must live very much below his means because, he's getting one paycheck a year. It's kind of crazy. I really cannot figure out what this guy is about. But he's ultra talented. He looked good. He looked sharp. I mean, for a guy that takes a whole year off between fights, he looks great. Imagine if he was in the ring 2 or 3 times a year. I mean, he just blow past people. He drives me crazy. If you couldn't tell.
I mean, we're talking excuses here about Russell. Well, you could say the same thing about one Keith Thurman during his press conference yesterday for the fight with Pacquiao, July 20th, I believe it was. He's already stated that that's going to be his second and only fight of 2019. He's going to need the rest of the year off to quote unquote rest. And I'm like, well, hell, dude, you just came back after 2-year layoff.
Because he's Keith one-time Thurman. He fights one time.
So that's I mean, I don't understand what's up with these fighters in 2019 who think that they need to fight just once or twice a year and that's all it is. But I'll go to you, Jacob and Daniel. Thoughts on Russell Jr. and what's up next for him if we see him again this year?
Yeah, Russell Jr. I mean, Kiko Martinez, he's seen better days. I mean, he had a couple fights with Frampton, and I think that was his peak performance. I think he fought Quigg. I know he fought Leo Santa Cruz because I think they threw like 1,000 punches or something combined. I was at that fight. So it was exciting for as much as it lasted in that fight. But I mean, this was just a gimme fight. The whole thing with Russell is, what? Stop talking and control your own destiny. To like what Gel said, since 2015, he fights basically one time a year, and it's the last 3 years it's been right at this May time frame. It was May 18th, May 19th, May 20th. Before that it was April 16th, and then before that was March 28th. So it's all right around this same time. And I remember when I actually was at this fight, and I'm sure Gel was at this fight too. When he fought Lomachenko and he lost, that was his first loss, and it was like kind of, he was kind of like the up-and-comer guy, and it was kind of defeating for him. I remember he was talking like he wanted that fight. He wanted a rematch with Lomachenko. He wanted that fight again. But then he just kind of went into obscurity with this, only fighting once a year. And like Gail said, only the hardcores really kind of remember, who he is. It's one thing to call out somebody, but again, do be active and try to make the fights happen. I mean, there's reasons that the fights aren't happening, and whether it's financial, whether it's timing, or whatever it is. But if you are a true fighter, then you'll figure it out, and you'll get your promoter, you'll get your manager to get you the fights that you want. I personally don't want to see him fight Leo Santa Cruz. I'd rather see Leo Santa Cruz fight Josh Warrington, because I think that would just be a gangbusters fight. And if Gary Russell isn't going to put in the work to stay relevant, then I don't really care if we ever see him again.
Well, and here's the problem. Jacob just put it perfectly. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. He claims he can't get fights, and so he doesn't fight. Well, part of the reason he doesn't get fights is he can't put butts in seats. Nobody wants to see him. Nobody remembers who he is. And, it's a chicken or the egg. What created which problem? Did the fact that he doesn't fight mean he can't get opponents to take him on because nobody's interested and it doesn't sell tickets? Or is it the other way around? Is he, the only reason he can't get in there and sell tickets is he can't get fights, and so nobody's interested. And I think a lot of his inability to get the fights, honest to God, if guys want fights, they get them. And if they can't get their top pick of opponent, they go work on number 2. They stay busy. They develop an audience. They do it themselves, DIY. You don't have to be leaning on other guys for an excuse. This is on him.
I'll go to you, Daniel Russell, who declared himself a free agent. So there wouldn't be no barriers for making certain fights happen, be it with be it with Santa Cruz, be it with Tank, or even a Warrington, as Jacob preferred. So what's holding Russell Jr. up from fighting more often?
And it's a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy in a way, because in a way he's gotten too used to, like I said, he got too used to just fighting once a year, and he got used to how much money he made, because everybody else was busy. We knew that Santa Cruz had his business with Frampton. Oscar Valdez was on the other side. So was Quigg. And then he took care of his mandatory Jojo Diaz in a pretty good fight. The problem, unfortunately, with Gary Russell now, he declared himself a free agent. Okay, that may automatically take you out of the running for Santa Cruz because of Santa Cruz's loyalty to Al Haymon. If it's a situation where Gary Russell says, I'm no longer working with Al Haymon, Santa Cruz can just say, well, I'm not working with you either because you're not working with Al Haymon. But it does open the avenues for a fight with Oscar Valdez. Josh Warrington, that would be a hell of a fight. His hand speed versus the work ethic of Josh Warrington would be amazing to do. So there are options. There are options that are available to open. The problem is he has to actually want to do it. Because think about it. Look at the time period that he's fought in. He's fought in May. So on average, he probably has a 4-month training camp. So realistically, if he wanted to fight again, it would have to be around October to November. And even then, that's not enough when it comes to a fight. So he has done it to himself, because barely people remember who he was. Like, you don't remember the fight with Jojo unless you're hardcore. You don't remember the fight with Lomachenko unless you're hardcore. So in a way, he's done it to himself. It's just mainly, can he take the steps at this point of his career to not only rectify it, but undo a lot of the damage that this kind of behavior did.
Well, yes, it's a wait and see. I think he ranks right up there with Warrington, with Santa Cruz. I think he's obviously a step level than Valdez, in my opinion. You would just like to see him fight the best of the best fight at 126. Now, whose fault it is, I don't know. A lot of people point at the direction of Russell. I can understand that. But if he's a free agent and if he wants to fight, you would think that he will do whatever is necessary to make the fights happen. Bottom line for me, I just want to see him more active because he is talented. He's one of the best out there at 126 pounds. Let's move on to some news here. As we all know, there's been some issues there's been threats hovering over boxing vis-a-vis the Olympics and whether we will see boxing at the 2020 games. I believe it's in Tokyo, the 2020 games. The IOC proposed earlier today proposed to suspend AIBA, which is the sanctioning body for boxing in the 2016 Olympics. AIBA having all kinds of issues with finances, governance, and just sheer integrity. It's been suspect, for lack of a better word, particularly with the 2016 games and other international events. I'll go to you, Daniel. The proposal took place. The proposal was today to suspend AIBA. It will go before the IOC membership, but I believe at their annual meeting next month. Your thoughts, your reaction to the suggestion to remove AIBA from running essentially boxing during the 2020 games in Tokyo?
It's not unexpected considering the reactions to the previous two heads. Like this, the second to last head of AIBA was banned for life because of gross incompetence and mismanagement. And the guy that AIBA chooses to replace him is, by all terms of means, a Uzbeki gangster. So, of course, if you want to think the IOC, if you want to not have this around. So I'm not really surprised. What's going to be interesting, though, is what they're going to do with the changes, because now it looks like they want to move from three women's divisions and 8 men's divisions to, I think, 8 divisions for men and then 5 divisions for women, almost making it completely equal. But it's going to be interesting to see what body are they going to use if it's not AIBA to actually run this, because almost every Olympic activity has that type of body where they're able to structure it. Is it going to be a situation where the IOC directly handles boxing? Or is it going to be a situation where promoters or other prospects get together and try to get it done? So I'm not really surprised. Like I just mentioned, the current head of AIBA, so Uzbeki, is a gangster from Uzbekistan. It was bound to happen sooner or later because that relationship has been strained for years.
I'll go to you, Gail and Jacob. Your reaction to the IOC's suggestion in terms of AIBA in the Olympic Games?
The writing's been on the wall for AIBA. Boy, to call the current chair a gangster is, mild to put it lightly. Is an absolute mess. It has no business running Olympic level competition, but it would be devastating to lose boxing in the Olympics. I would love to see even one of the current worldwide sanctioning bodies for professionals just step up to get it by until they figure out, another sort of organization to take over. The biggest loss, if we don't have Olympic boxing, would be to the women's side of the game. Olympic boxing, the addition of women to Olympic boxing has launched the current growth of women's professional boxing. Look at all the big current stars. Other than the women who've been grinding it out in Europe for years and years, like Cecilia Brækhus or Delvine Persoon, most of the big stars have come out of the last couple of Olympic Games. It's really, really important to the women's side of the sport to give them that launching pad at the Olympics. It's worked really well. There would not really be a Katie Taylor, a Claressa Shields, a Michaela Mayer, a Marlon Esparza, a Nicole Adams. Pardon my dog Dolly barking. She agrees.
Not your dog. They're just reacting to AIBA. That's all.
Yeah, absolutely. So the women actually need it more than the men. I would hate to see it go no matter what. And even for the men, we have quite a few current young stars who've come out of the Olympics. Shakur Stevenson, Michael Conlon, Oscar Valdez was an Olympian. The American men have had a rougher time earning their medals, but it still matters. It's still really important. Wilder's a bronze medalist. So we got to figure out a way. Everyone in boxing needs to put their thinking cap on. Let's just do what is necessary to at least get by for the next cycle. And then we've got 4 years to find a real permanent solution.
Your reaction, Jacob?
Not too much more to add. I'm not as versed in the amateur and Olympic system, although I had heard rumblings that boxing in the Olympics was kind of on the fence of potentially going away. But I agree with Gail. It would be a really bad situation for the current situation to change. I don't know if I agree that one of the sanctioning bodies should take it over, because unfortunately I feel like they have a lot of, maybe not gangster level corruption, but they do have a lot of corruption and problems on their plate as it is. So I don't really know what the solution is, and I don't know if it can be fixed in time. But I guess the good thing is that you have that 4-year gap to hopefully be able to figure out something. But it would actually, it would be a real travesty if this just all fell apart and there was no boxing in Olympics, period.
Gus, you mentioned Gus, who isn't here with us this evening. He's always talked about DAZN. And from the jump, from a financial perspective, DAZN, there's been misdealings and mishandlings in terms of the financial infrastructure of DAZN. Jacob, you shared a story with us on Twitter about an article speaking to those financial issues with DAZN. I'm going to give you an opportunity to talk about what you shared with us on Twitter earlier today, and then we can have a reaction to that. So, Jacob, share what you disclosed to us privately on Twitter today regarding DAZN.
Yeah, I was. I just, I'm not as versed as, Gus is, master about all that kind of back behind the scenes thing, but from what I saw, on my timeline, there was, I don't know if it was like an article or it was like a kind of response to an article or stuff that had been happening with DAZN itself. But basically it was that the group that co-funds DAZN is pulling their investments because their subscriber rate isn't increasing percentage-wise as much as they want, and the word is that it's going to be sold to another. DAZN could potentially be sold to another company, a tech company. So I don't know what that means, but it DAZN is not that, hasn't been around. Has it been less than a year? So it's kind of boxing is a very tough business, to get into, especially with all the established platforms that exist out there, and the streaming being kind of the future. But with HBO getting out of the game, there potentially could have been room for another platform. But I don't know if DAZN, I guess, is going to be that in the future. So I hope they stick around, because I've enjoyed the fights that they've been able to put on their platform. And they've signed a lot of the bigger names, and I think they're trying to do good by boxing. But unfortunately, if money talks. So if they're not making money off of it, then it's hard not to see why investors would pull out. Kind of similar how the whole PBC thing, started off with a lot of money, and then it kind of slowly crumbled, and now most of those fights are on Showtime or Fox, and it shrank down a lot.
I'll go to you, Daniel and Gail. According to what you shared, Jacob, DAZN is operating right now under $4.6 billion deficit. And that doesn't even factor the cost of acquiring new premium domestic rights, which DAZN must employ to improve its acquisition funnel, highlighting the uphill battle that the operation that DAZN currently faces. I've heard of some stuff about this on other forums and whatnot. How accurate or the legitimacy, I don't know, but you've heard rumblings about DAZN having financial issues really from the start. Your thoughts, Daniel and Gail, to the latest rumblings regarding DAZN?
I've been trying to dig out the press release. I haven't seen it yet, unfortunately, with an official letterhead or with an official report. But from a business standpoint, it sounds very, very much like a premature move, because you should have known that if you're really invested into something like a streaming service, when it comes to sports, at a time where yes, cord cutting is coming by, but at the same time, it's not at the pace that it used to be, because people really, really, really aren't going to catch on yet, because it's starting to look like when you cord cut, you get so many subscriptions to things, it's almost as much as the bill they've been trying to avoid, which is cable. And so you kind of had to know that facing that landscape, that according, like I said, to what Jacob shared, DAZN doesn't even have 1% of the market share when it comes into it. Of course, you're not going to get a market share if it's barely a year or year plus since you did this launch. You're not going to have that. You need to establish that. So it requires something that has to be at least 3 to 4 years at the minimum for you to start seeing an actual return on investment. Nothing in this stage when it comes to technology is going to be instantaneous. And not to mention, okay, you have the North American market. DAZN, like you said, has a pretty decent European front with Bundesliga. So the American markets was going to be hard. And not to mention the variety of what DAZN does, like we mentioned it. Bundesliga sports, you have Bellator. You just have to give it time. And if said company wants to pull the funding, it's to me, from a business standpoint, very, very mature. Very, 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 very trigger happy. And in a way, probably in the long run, the wrong investment.
I'll go to you, Gail. Do you share Daniel's sentiments? Just too premature, this talk?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a discussion about investors, not about the programming proposition. And when you have investors who aren't in this, because they want to bring boxing or MMA to the masses, they want to invest their money and make money. And they invest because they think they can make money. And they tend not to be very patient. about it. You don't want to sit around waiting for your money, your investments, to start giving you a return. So impatience is the enemy here. They don't see it happening yet. They aren't willing to play the long game, which is what's going to be necessary here to make the investment and stay patient and wait for it to pay off. They want it now, and so they get scared off and say, well, this isn't going to give me a return in the, a reasonable 3, 4, 5 quarters, whatever it is they were promised or whatever they thought was going to happen. They're going to want to get out. DAZN itself is willing to play the long game. They're starting to acquire content, and you're right. Not only do they have combat sports, they've got a brand new partnership with Major League Baseball in North America, which is something else that they can offer to try to get more long-term subscribers in the United States. They just entered their 9th market in Brazil. They are in Europe. Their biggest market and their biggest share of revenue comes in Asia. So you have to ask yourself, are they diversifying into the right places? Are they overextended? Did they miscalculate the rate of speed at which they'd acquire subscribers, making their investment, and is that making their original investors nervous enough to pull out, forcing them to find others, or else they're going to become an acquisition target? And God forbid they get acquired by even more ruthless investors out of the technology sector who, want to know what you've done for me lately, and lately is last week. They are definitely not in it for the long haul. They can't endure temporary losses with the promise of a big payoff down the road. So this is all a discussion about financial markets that really has nothing to do with intrinsically the quality of the product. This is unfortunately a miscalculation about the speed of return on investment, and the unwillingness of the investors to be patient. They either picked the wrong investors, they misled their investors misunderstood. I don't really know which, if of any, or if all of those are true. The discussion is floating around out there. I'm sure that a lot of it's partially true. Some of it's probably completely true, and some of it's probably completely wrong. But it does bear watching, because this has scooped up and become the de facto substitute for HBO boxing. And without this, those players are going to need to scatter if that's going to happen. I don't think DAZN is going to dissolve anytime soon, like next week or next year, but it does bear watching to see what happens. This is a really tough business, and this new streaming universe we're in is still finding its way. For all the successes out there, for all of us who find this very normal, we are still in the minority of viewers. Things are changing, and it's rough seas right now for these companies.
During the show, the name of Keith Thurman's name was mentioned by myself. Had the press conference yesterday, basically to announce the fight with Pacquiao in July. For those who saw the presser, your reaction to what you saw from both Thurman and Pacquiao, quickly, please, for anybody who saw it. Anyone?
There were no surprises as far as I was concerned. What struck me is watching Keith Thurman. I thought, do you have amnesia over your performance in your last fight? Because, sir, you sucked. You looked terrible. You lost that fight. I think he's just completely put it out of his mind. He sort of pretended that fight never happened. He has got a lot of work to do. He cannot rest entirely on his previous work history. His best days are starting to be very, very far behind him. And yes, he's facing a quickly fading version of Manny Pacquiao, who's 40 years old. Nevertheless, this is still Manny Pacquiao. A faded version of Manny Pacquiao is still a worthy competitor. And this is more of an interesting fight based on what we saw from Thurman than I think most of us would have guessed, before. How re-energized is Pacquiao? How much did that Broner fight put the fire back in him? Pacquiao's problem over the last decade has been all internal. When he's focused, he performs well. He trains well. When he's distracted, when his training schedule, training life isn't settled, he does poorly. So which version's going to come out? It's definitely going to be interesting to watch. I think Keith Thurman could be in trouble. Here he is talking about, I want Spence, and he's acting like he's the Keith Thurman of 2016 or 17. It's 2019. He needs to check the calendar.
I mean, look, man, he's finally about time he mentioned Spence's name. Spence been calling this dude out for years, and he's been crickets. Now he wants to talk about Spence.
He is in no position to face Errol Spence the way he looked.
He's not even the A side at this point. He's not.
Absolutely. He is not the A side against Pacquiao. I mean, who would have thought? No kidding. Not in my mind, he's not. And he may think he is. That last fight was a big red flag as far as I'm concerned.
I think Pacquiao beats him, though. I'd give him more than a good enough shot to beat Thurman. Thurman does have skill, but the way his inactivity, his injuries, the way he's always been a front runner. He does well in the early rounds, and then he starts to fade. People that he's hurt or knocked down, he can't seem to finish them off. And he was touted as this guy with power, but when he started to step up his level of competition, he wasn't really doing that. With the exception, I think, of Collazo was the only person, and even in that fight, he had to fight back from adversity because he got hit with that body shot. I don't know. There's a lot of boxers like this where they talk a good game, and they have the undefeated record to go off. But again, if you go off his past performances, he had the Danny Garcia was a good performance, but again he split decision. He faded late in that fight. Sean Porter was a good performance, but some say that he could have lost that fight. But then you have Pacquiao, kind of like what Gel was saying, where he's had Bradley, he beat him pretty handily. I think he even knocked him down. Vargas, Jesse Vargas is whatever. Basically put Matisse into retirement, but he was on his way out. Broner, and that was a gimme fight, but he was, even the Horn fight. I thought he won that fight, even though it wasn't his best performance. But he seems to have a little bit more of at least a fighting spirit where he will go after it versus a Thurman who tends to kind of we don't know whether his head's really in it, or he's said so many encryptive things where he's done with boxing. He's happy being married, he's happy doing this and that. And again, I don't know what these guys do with their money. If they're smart about it, they can have other avenues of investments, and then they're not relying on boxing to supplement them. For me, I have to go to work every day because I need money to pay my bills. But if he doesn't have that similar problem, that starts to separate the fighter that's fighting because he wants to fight and prove himself versus the fighter that's just collecting a check.
I think that Thurman might be preparing to go on a flute concert tour or something.
Flute, ukulele, whatever you want to call that instrument, he's playing.
Double bill it with a Kenny G. Bring
something.
him back.
Quick word, Daniel, from you on what you saw from the presser between Thurman and Pacquiao.
It's pretty much a standard presser. Thurman said what he needed to say, even though nobody believes him at this point. Pacquiao, yeah, he does sound a little bit more hungry, but then he did reveal, like in previous interviews, his motivation. Like he's still trying to get that fight with Floyd, that rematch. So ultimately, it's a pretty standard affair. You could tell that Pacquiao probably wants a little more, his head's more into it than Thurman, but at the same time, Thurman maybe just be kind of on his youth to win out. And he might make the mistake of already looking past Pacquiao towards other fights, and when you can't really do that with Manny, even at this stage. But it's going to be an interesting affair. Like I said, at least Thurman is facing his mandatory, and at this stage, like I said, I would give the edge to Manny because we don't know what version of Thurman you're going to get, but at least you know what version of Manny you're going to get.
Yeah, let's move on to some fights to preview this weekend. Going to start with some ladies boxing first. I'll go to you, Gail, to talk about this. I've mentioned in past episodes, Ladies Love Boxing show, in particular, round 4 of that the trend seems to be unification towards unification in women's boxing, at least more unification in women's boxing, and then men putting all the titles on the line. We saw it at middleweight with Clarissa Shields and Hammer. We're going to see it June the 1st on the undercard of Joshua and Ruiz. When we talk to Delphine Pearson and Katie Taylor, they're putting all the belts on the line at 135 pounds. Going to see another unification bout this weekend in Chicago, I believe it is. No, I can't remember. I think it's in Chicago. As Jessica McCaskill is going to be fighting Anaya.
It's Chicago.
Yeah, it's going to be fighting Anaya Sanchez on the DAZN. Junior welterweight titles on the line. Once again, Gail, unification in women's boxing. You got to love it.
Ladies showing the way. Yeah, Jessica McCaskill is a Chicago native, but she is fighting at MGM National Harbor on that Haney undercard in Maryland on Saturday. And she is taking on the WBA champion, Anahi Sanchez. She is the WBC champion. So we have a legit super lightweight division unification fight. She recently beat Erica Farias to win the belt in her 8th pro fight. She had a loss to Katie Taylor. No shame in that. You know, the ladies are willing to take the losses, mix it up. They fight everyone. Part of it is that they're a little more forced too, because there is thinner competition, especially at the top of women's professional divisions in boxing. But by God, they do it. They still do it. She's 34 years old. She is working now with Rick Ramos in Chicago, and this is will be an all-action fight. These ladies come to play. She's tough. She's Chicago personality all the way. It should be a very fun fight to watch. And I'm very happy to see the ladies getting some attention. Part of it is because, as I'm sure we'll talk about, the main event that was originally planned for Saturday is no longer taking place. So it's given a little more time, space, and attention to this fight between McCaskill and Sanchez. And I hope they rise to the occasion. Good for them.
It's interesting that the common opponent here is Katie Taylor for both ladies. Katie Taylor beats Sanchez and McCaskill back-to-back. Beat Sanchez October 2017. 2017, beat McCaskill December 2017, both by decision. I see Jacob had to step away. Go to you, Daniel. Your thoughts on this fight, if you have any? It should be a good one based on styles alone.
Yeah, it's going to be a very, very fun fight. I'm going to know a lot more about McCaskill since I'm going to do my show tomorrow with John Francis. Like I said, they're from Chicago. They have watched her fight before. We know Bo has really high hopes for her, so it's going to be an entertaining fight. And like Gail said before when we started in, ladies are starting to lead the way when it comes to doing things like unification fights into this. Something that it's taken tournaments to try to somewhat achieve on the men's side. So it's going to be a very fun, entertaining fight, and I'm really, really cheering for McCaskill. She does have a really good story, and hopefully we'll see a good matchup pretty soon.
This fight is taking place on the undercard of Devin Haney, his debut bouts with DAZN. He recently signed a co-promotion deal with DAZN, fighting a fighter by the name of Antonio Moran. I'm going back to you, Daniel. You can comment as well, Gail and Jacob. I don't know much about Moran. I haven't had time to look up any fights on him. If you have, your thoughts on his style and how much of a problem he could give one Devin Haney.
I haven't seen much as far as when it comes to styles, as far as because it is pretty hard to find decent footage of Antonio Moran. But this is a good move by Devin Haney in a way because yes, he's undefeated, and yes, he's a pretty high prospect in the lightweight division, but we don't really know yet how good he's going to be because he has barely crossed the threshold from prospect to French contender. Yes, you have to remember he has to cross the prospect from French contender to legitimate contender. And in a way, this is actually a better way to do it because if you listen to Haney the whole way, he's always been about doing it, promoting himself, having been in charge of this whole situation. But I'm glad that he's, like I said, getting into a co-promotional deal. It doesn't matter for some Matchroom. Matchroom will at least do some moves with him. And I expect good performances from David Haney anytime you see him out because he has impressed on every single Showbox card that I've seen him in. And I don't expect anything different.
I'll go to you, Gail and Jacob. Like I said, I haven't seen much of Moran, just seen some highlight clips of him fighting Pedraza. He gave Pedraza a tough scrap. Pedraza winning by decision, I believe it was. If you see more of him, please give him some more information on him and any kind of problems that he can pose for the young lightweight upstart Haney.
I think you've got a veteran, tough, willing to mix it up, standing there in front of Haney, and that's who he should be looking at this time. He doesn't need to be fighting any world beaters or, guys at the top of the division. But Moran has plenty of experience. The only fight I have seen of his was against Pedraza, and that was a fairly close fight. It went the distance. Moran apparently had a second round knockout in December in Mexico. No video as far as I know. I haven't really scrounged the internet for it either. So that's sort of your typical getting back on the horse fight. So I'm not sure that it proves much. But this is exactly the kind of person Haney should be facing now. Somebody who can stand up to some punching power if he gets hit flush. Somebody who, is willing to get hit to deliver a hit. That's the kind of guy Moran will be. He needs to go rounds. Some of these guys that have the flashy first round knockouts, it's not always the best thing for them. This is the kind of fight for a young guy like Haney that will benefit him down the road. It'll keep him in the ring, thinking on his feet, with the adrenaline going. You just can't substitute for those minutes in the ring when it counts, when the judges are watching, with any amount of sparring or training in the gym. You just can't. You've got to go real rounds. And this is exactly what he needs to do. Will it be the most exciting fight in the world? It might not be a thrill-a-minute main event, but it will be what Haney needs at this point of his career. And maybe he'll surprise us and deliver a real knockout reel or a highlight reel knockout somewhere in the fight. I'm not really thinking so, and that's really not the kind of guy he is. He's smart in the ring. He doesn't take unnecessary chances when he absolutely doesn't have to. He's willing, but if he doesn't see the need, he's not stupid. He's not going to put himself in that position. He does not let his emotions get the best of him. He's a smart young man. We talked to him in Las Vegas. He met the media as part of the Canelo Jacobs fight week, and listening to him talk about his new promotional partnership with Matchroom Boxing, you can tell he is sitting there watching Eddie Hearn and Eddie's executives absorbing the business end of the sport like a sponge. This is one smart, ambitious man, which I like.
Your thoughts, Jacob?
Sorry, I was on mute there. Yeah, I think, again, not too much more to add. I don't know too much about Moran, but I think with the investment that Haney or Hearn has made in Haney, in the sense that he's the top prospect that he signed, I don't think he's going to put him in there with anybody that's going to potentially, kind of upset that trajectory that he wants to build off of in building his stable. So my guess is that this is just kind of a stay busy fight, get some rounds in, and a guy that's probably not going to just lay down, but that'll maybe give him the rounds and give him the activity, so that he can move on to as he moves through his career, move on to other things. So that's basically my take on it.
Look at some stuff up here. Oh yeah, Masayuki Ito. Last year, unknown fighter, fought Christian Rodriguez, I believe it was, from Puerto Rico, for the vacant WBO belts at 130 pounds. A lot of people felt he was the clear underdog. Rodriguez, much ballyhooed amateur, thought he had star potential at junior lightweights. Well, Ito upset the apple cart. Not only did he beat Rodriguez, beat him in fairly convincing fashion. Well, Ito made a title defense in December in his native Japan. He's returning to the United States this weekend to fight Jamal Haney. Your thoughts on that fight, and what could be big plans for one Ito later on this year? And what I mean by plans is possible unification bout. Your thoughts? I'll go to you. I'll go to you first, Daniel. Oh, I see Daniel has left. Are you there,
No. Sorry. Yeah, sorry. I was on mute. Okay. No, Masayuki Ito, he's been very impressive for a guy that does not have that much of an amateur background. And he's always improving every single fight, even after winning the title. I'm more interested to see what Herring's going to do, because if people know Herring's story, he used to train. It was under Broner's camp and Bang camp. Obviously, like, his times in the Marine finally kicked in. Probably wasn't able to tolerate the lack of discipline that Broner's camp seems to have. And ultimately they moved towards sign with Tom Brink, and he's getting this title shot. I want to see how good he does. He's one of the Olympians in 2012, 2028 that has always flown a little bit under the radar. So this is his first shot. I want to see how he fares, because it'll be interesting to see how much of his amateur background that he has can he actually use against somebody like Ito, who keeps improving despite not having one.
I'll go to you. Gail. Your thoughts on Ito and the fight against Herring?
This is a very interesting fight. I'm afraid that a lot of people will miss this fight, and this could be the fight of the weekend. I have a very soft spot for Herring as a Marine, coming from San Diego, where we have enormous respect and affection for the Marine Corps. He's certainly passed through this area. His moniker is Semper Fi, Herring. So, there are a lot of guys who, really think the world of him. And, yeah, his career has just never caught fire the way a lot of people thought it might. He's got 2 losses on his record. The first one was to Denis Shafikov in 2016, and it was a 10-round fight and a 10-round TKO. Those are really hard fights to lose. And then he had another, sort of oddball loss in a unanimous decision loss where he just looked like he was underwater. It was to Ladarius Miller. So he's really struggled the last couple of years. He was very, very active when he was first a professional out of the Olympics. And, he's just sort of tailed off little by little by little. I hope he puts in a good effort. He's going to face a buzzsaw, though, in Ito. I hope he's up to it. He has a lot of mental fortitude, but he's a southpaw. He's not horribly fast. He's an older fighter at 33 from that particular Olympics team. He was the senior member of the team in many ways. He was still an active duty Marine at the time as a sergeant. So, I hope he puts on a good performance. I am afraid if Ito really goes to town, Herring's long-term career could be in jeopardy. We'll see. I hope it's a good competitive fight for both guys, and they're both at their best.
I'll go to you, Jacob. Lastly, your thoughts on Ito and Herring and what could be up next.
I agree with Gail. I think this is a sneaky fight of the week. Potentially, the women's bout is also McCaskill and Sanchez. I think that'll be a pretty good fight. But I have to go with Ito on this one. I think he's impressed me, and he's been able to, in my opinion, kind of do more with his skill set than the Herring did or has. And not that Herring's a bad fighter. I think the points were made already. He's kind of had a little bit of a weird career, but I just think that Ito's going to be a little bit too much for him skill-wise, and unfortunately for him, being a Marine and his service to his country, and I applaud him for that. But I think Ito is just going to pull this out.
One more last bit of news story here. I should have mentioned this within the recaps. I'm going to you on this one, Gail. I mentioned the word unification. I mentioned Clarissa Shields' name. Also, and within her division, there's also a fighter by the name of Raquel Miller. We've talked about her on the show in the past. In the early days of Pound for Pound Box Report, she did the honor of having an interview with me. This is when she was still an amateur, getting ready to turn pro. She moved to 9-0 over the weekend with the 7th round stoppage over a fighter by the name of Tough Gill in California, Gail. In the aftermath, there's been some trash talk between Miller and Clarissa Shields. For those who don't know, Miller and Shields, they have history. They fought twice during the amateurs. Shields beat her twice. Miller was an alternate for the 2012 Olympic Games, where she sparred Shields, essentially got Shields ready for the Olympics in 2012. There have been some trash talk between the two as professionals. It continued earlier this week on Instagram. I sent kind of a photo series here from what they said on IG here in the Skype chat. Your reaction to the back and forth between Miller and Shields. The thing I will say, with Shields' win, she wins the NABF middleweight title, puts her in the rankings, and I will say it right now, if they keep progressing, they keep winning, particularly on Miller's side, she may be one of the few middleweights out there who can really give Clarissa Shields a fight.
Well, and motivation can be everything in boxing. You know, she sees what she had hoped would be her spot in the Olympics taken by Shields. So,
well, technically they fought in small. Okay, they initially fought in the same division. Miller moved down, then moved back up, but still, they did fight twice. Technically, they did fight twice, and they are in the same division now as pros.
Yeah, and in the Olympics, you know, there up to this point have only been 3 divisions. So if there had been more, you know, it's very possible we could have seen them both go, spreading out, you know, the available spots. But simply put, there were only 3. So Miller is out of San Francisco. She's 34, so she's a veteran, even though she's only got 9 fights, but she is undefeated. Erin Tuffle just had a bout against Maricela Cornejo in her comeback fight and lost. So Tuffle has been out of boxing, but is a very tough competitor. And it was kind of a wild fight. Miller scored a knockdown in the first round on a body shot. You don't see that from the women all that often. Now, Tuffle,
it was a beautiful combination of a left hook up top, left hook up top, and then she went right back down to the body.
Picture perfect textbook, exactly like the men would do it. She delivered. But Tuffle, to her credit, got up, carried on, kept going. It was an 8-round fight. They got to the 7th round, and she got knocked down again, and she beat the count, but then she couldn't continue. So by the California rules, that's considered a knockout versus a TKO. So good fight, good performance for Miller, very flashy performance for her against a very worthy opponent. You know, I laugh that we make such a damn big deal about 2 boxers trash talking each other when they're women, when we don't think twice about it when the men do it. You know, what's the difference? They're competitors. They're athletes. They're aggressive. They're in a combat sport. Trash talk. Oh my God. Clutch the pearls. They're trash talking each other. So what? So what? Let them do it. It's drawn our attention. We're talking about it. You know, as long as it doesn't get out of hand or spill out into real life and, you know, end up in a fight in a hotel lobby, I don't have any problem with it. We don't have any problem with it when the men do it. I think that equal trash talk treatment needs to be imposed on boxing.
Yeah, and the trash talk drew some ire. Well, not ire, drew some responses from other fighters. Cyborg got into the discussion. Alicia Baumgartner got into the discussion as well, saying, let's make it happen. And the interesting thing is, Miller is now being promoted by Lou DiBella. If DiBella is smart, he would try to position Miller on a showbox card, preferably on a Shields title defense.
Absolutely, and Lou's a smart man. He can do it.
Because we're talking unification bouts here with other fighters outside of the unification bouts. Shields Miller is one of the best fights out there from a skill perspective alone, look, Miller hasn't fought the competition that Claressa Shields has, but based on skill alone, she can do some things in there. Shields fought Hammer. Hammer had a good jab, but Miller showed that Shields showed, that Hammer didn't have much after the jab. Miller has more than a jab. Very good hand speed, can move around the ring. Excellent combination punches to the head and body. She's been schooled very well in all aspects of the game. Has sought out Andre Ward and his team for advice. Him and his team has been doing a lot of side coaching with her along with her regular team. So she has a good base of support in terms of that. I would really like to see that fight in another 6 months. I would like to see that fight sometime in 2020. Your thoughts, folks?
Sounds like a decent timetable.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get it on. There's, as long as she can stay busy, stay out there, as long as they can maintain the interest, the women can't really afford to wait quite as long. And the women tend to stay in longer because they have to wait longer sometimes, between getting fights. She is 34, so she would be facing an opponent 10 years younger than her. And that, for her, probably needs to happen, sooner versus later. The other, potential opponents out there, which, would be interesting to see what could happen. I think she'd absolutely destroy Christina Hammer. I'm not sure there's a whole lot of point to that, unfortunately. Despite the fact that she's also, getting quite a bit up there in age, I wouldn't mind seeing her fight Tori Nelson. Would be an interesting fight. I think she'd give Cornejo some serious problems. I think that's probably too much to ask. But, this is a tough division for her to find opponents in. The other thing that she could consider, which would make sort of an interesting round robin, I would be very interested if she thought she could move up a division to move up to super middleweight and fight Franchon Cruz DAZN, who's the WBC super middleweight champion.
You're talking about Shields?
No, I'm talking about Miller. If she can't get Shields right away, and she's, having to find opponents, that's a title fight in a larger division. And a lot of men have tested themselves, in outside of their own division, with a fight like that. That'd be a very interesting fight to me. And I don't
know if she has the size to fight at 68.
I don't think she does. And Franchon, and she knows how to use that weight, throw it around. Miller is much more, despite her power, is a much more finesse fighter. But hopefully she won't be out of the ring too long. That's really the biggest issue for the women at the top of the sport.
And I think we're going to close the show down on that note. Lou DiBella, if you're smart as I think you are, you would make moves to try to put Miller in position to get in the ring with one Claressa Shields. There's background there. Will be an attractive fight. I think it could draw fans. Do what you have to do to put her in a position to make it happen. I want to go around the panel here. Though we didn't start the show with ladies first, we're going to close the show with ladies first. Gail from Communities Digital News for those who want to talk boxing, for those who want to talk small business advice, media. Since you are teaching media right now, Game of Thrones that just ended, Dancing with the Stars. Let the folks know where they can find you.
Hey, and Dancing with the Stars will be back in the fall. I was one of the few people that actually liked the end of Game of Thrones, but I think that's because yeah. If you were a reader of the books, I think we ended up with another divide. One last note on the Haney undercard, there will also be a heavyweight prospect worth your time. Filip Hrgović is from Croatia, fighting Gregory Corbin. It's his U.S. debut. He's worth watching. Filip Hrgović, rising heavyweight star from Eastern Europe. And Michael Hunter is also on that undercard. So I can be found at Communities Digital News. That's COM, C-O-M-M, Digi, D-I-G-I, News, comdiginews.com. And please remember those who served our country this Memorial Day weekend.
Indeed. Thank you for that. I'm going to go to Daniel from the Inscriber for those who want to talk the sweet science, for those who want to talk the NBA, especially when it comes to the Miami Heat. Let the folks know where they can find you.
Yes, folks, you can find me on Twitter at Ruckus99. Tomorrow night, I'm going to set up the show with Joe Francis for BoxNews.com. That's how we always have a good discussion when we talk about the previous weeks, and we're going to definitely preview Ito Herring, Haney Moran, an interesting little gateway bout, Austin Choppers Taro Geisha, and probably even see what we're going to do with Hughie Fury, because if Hughie's around, we know Tyson ain't that far behind.
I'll go last, but certainly not least to you, Jacob. Jacob from Jab Hook. Also a sometimes guest on the Wrong Real podcast, movie podcast. Let the folks know where they can hit you up.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show, and I want to echo Gail's sentiments about thanking all the women and men for their services. I know, Daniel, I believe you serve, so thank you for your service.
Daniel, as well as frequent guest, Bo. I'm from Truth and Facts About Sports and Three Kings Boxing as well.
Yeah, so thank you guys, and yeah, I can be found on Twitter at JRATM23. And yes, I just, my episode, I recorded it, I think it was the day after the DAZN card of Rungvisai and Estrada, so a few weeks back. And Steven Soderbergh episode, it's out now. You can go to basically any platform, look up Wrong Reel, reel as in like a film reel. Yeah, we do his filmography. We do our top 5, me and the guest, and we also kind of hit on, highlights of his career and just kind of speak on all that. So it was a fun episode, and check that out. And check out, like I said before, check out Gus, who's been on the show a bunch of times. He does videos. He's been doing a lot more videos of his breakdowns with boxing, corruption and boxing on YouTube. And of course there's Daniel's show, and keep on supporting this show. If you can contribute, I try to contribute when I can to the show. But yeah, thanks for having me on.
If you like what you've heard, we'll be eventually on YouTube. If you like what you've heard, for those who will be listening on YouTube, please hit that like button. Please hit that subscribe button. If you want to follow me, if you want to follow me or talk boxing, sports, music, fitness, check your email, Gail. I did send some new music your way, I believe, this afternoon. You know what it is on Twitter, Brother JR at Brother JR76. As I said to begin the show, if you want to find out all information regarding Pound for Pound Boxing Report, p4bboxingreport.wordpress.com. That's the blog address. Just hit that up. Check the right of the page. You will find links to where to find us all over social media, where to find us all over platforms that carry podcasts, as well as the donate buttons. Let donation be the best nation. Cash Me and PayPal donation links there. And last but certainly not least, Beachbody Online Coach. Going to try to send out the information regarding fitness challenge. I'm doing a fitness challenge in July. If you're interested in some fun workouts, if you're interested in all things Beachbody or Beachbody or Demand, hit me up. Daniel, Gail, I will send out the information over the weekend starting July 1st. My We Build Together fitness challenge. So please check me out. On the next episode, we would do a recap of Ito Herring, of Haney, Moran, of McCaskill, and Anahi Sanchez. And our previews will be devoted to the June 1st DAZN card in NYC. Anthony Joshua making his U.S. debut. He's fighting Andy Ruiz, a substitute for Big Baby Miller, of course. On the undercard of that, Callum Smith, making the first defense of his WBA super middleweight title. He's fighting Hassan and Dom. Interesting welterweight prospect, Josh Kelly from the UK, guy I really like. I like his ability. He's fighting in a 10-round welterweight contest against Ray Robinson. And we mentioned unification seems to be the theme among ladies boxing. We mentioned this fight, Katie Taylor fighting Delphine Pearson. All 4 of the belts on the line. Unified, undisputed lightweight titles. They're putting it all on the line, folks, so that should be a very interesting fight. Has a chance to be a fight of the night, in my opinion, so we would do a preview of those fights, focusing on the June 1st DAZN card, So, for Gail from Communities Digital News, from Jacob from Jab Hook, Daniel from the Inscriber, I am your host, Michael. We will see you guys next time. Everyone have a good evening. Good night.
Good night.
Night, folks.